The year is 1912. I remember arriving at Blackwood Manor, an English boarding school as old as the hills it stood on. They put me in Dormitory C. It was a long, cavernous room with cold stone walls that seemed to weep with a damp English air. 20 narrow wooden beds lined the walls, 10 on each side, their frames casting long, skeletal shadows in the flickering candlelight. But there were only 19 of us. 19 boys assigned to a room with 20 beds. The 20th bed, the one right by the large, fog-shrouded window at the far end of the room, remained empty. It was always perfectly made, the sheets crisp and white, the pillow plump and untouched. No one ever went near it. The masters never spoke of it, and a strange, unspoken rule seemed to hang in the air among the boys. You do not touch the last bed. The first few nights were unsettling. The ancient building groaned around us. The wind howled outside like a hungry wolf, and the floorboards creaked with phantom footsteps. But the real dread began on the third night. I woke up suddenly, my heart pounding. A glance at the old clock on the wall showed the time, 2:13 a.m. The room was silent, except for the soft, rhythmic breathing of the other boys. Then I heard it. A new sound, a slow, shallow breath, coming from the far end of the room. From the empty bed by the window, I lay there, frozen, listening. Inhale, exhale. It was faint, but it was unmistakably there. I told myself it was just the wind, a trick of the old building's acoustics, but night after night, it was the same. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the breathing would start. It was never loud, never aggressive, just a quiet, lonely sound that made the cold in the room seep deep into your bones. Some of the other boys heard it too. I could tell by the way they'd stiffen in their beds, their own breathing catching in their throats. We never talked about it in the daylight. It was a secret we shared in the suffocating darkness, a collective nightmare we couldn't wake from. We'd just lie there, eyes squeezed shut, praying for the morning light. One night, driven by a morbid curiosity I couldn't suppress, I decided to look. As the clock hand crept towards that dreaded time, I propped myself up on one elbow, my eyes fixed on the last bed. 2:13 a.m. The breathing started, and then I saw him. A figure was sitting up in the bed. It was a boy, no older than myself, dressed in an old, threadbare version of our school uniform. He was pale, almost translucent, the moonlight from the window passing right through him. He wasn't looking at me. He was just staring straight ahead at the wall, his expression one of profound, eternal sadness. He looked forgotten. My own breath hitched in my throat, but I couldn't look away. I watched as his pale lips parted, and a whisper, so quiet it was more a feeling than a sound, drifted across the room. It was a single, heartbreaking sentence. They forgot me again. Then, as slowly as he had appeared, he faded away, leaving the bed once again empty and pristine. The breathing stopped. I found out later, from a hushed conversation with an older groundskeeper, that decades ago, a boy named Thomas had lived in Dormitory C. He was a quiet, solitary child who often got sick. One winter, during a terrible flu outbreak, the school sent everyone home. In the chaos of the evacuation, Thomas, sleeping off a fever in his bed by the window, was overlooked. He was left behind, forgotten. They found him days later, cold and still in his bed. The story haunted me. Every night, I would lie awake, waiting for 2:13 a.m., waiting for Thomas. He always appeared, always sitting, always staring, always whispering those same tragic words. They forgot me again. It wasn't scary anymore, it was just incredibly sad. I felt a strange pity for this lonely spirit, trapped in a loop of his final, abandoned moments. The term was coming to an end. It was the final night at Blackwood Manor. I lay in my bed, thinking that soon I would be free of this nightly ritual, free of the cold dread and the phantom breathing. The clock ticked to 12 a.m. I closed my eyes, almost welcoming the familiar sound for the last time. 2:13 a.m. The breathing began, but this time it was different. It wasn't coming from the far end of the room. It was close, right next to me. My eyes snapped open. The air had turned, and there he was. Thomas. He was no longer in his bed by the window. He was standing beside my bed, his translucent form shimmering in the faint moonlight. His eyes, once vacant and sad, were now fixed directly on me. They were hollow, empty, but held an intensity that rooted me to my mattress. Elian, down his face just inches from mine, I could feel a deathly chill radiate from him. A cold that had nothing to do with the drafty old room. His voice was no longer a faint whisper. It was clear, raspy, and filled with a chilling, patient demand. He spoke 2 words that stopped my heart. Move. It's my turn.